And this is Cutting Through the Matrix. For new members, look into cuttingthroughthematrix.com and download to your heart's content. It's all free. Also, you can buy some stuff there, too, that keeps me going if you want to bother. And also look into Alan Watts' Sentinel.eu. It's the 12th of December, 2007. For this last little while, I've been going on about the direction we're all being herded towards, which is initially the Orwellian state, which is to go into the Huxleyan state, the Brave New World scenario. A state where everything will all be tidied up. None of this independence nonsense and individual rights nonsense that keeps all the big boys from getting the great work done. All that is to go by the wayside, and we'll be trained. We've been trained our whole lives, actually, towards it, to allow the ones in charge, the experts at the top, the ones who know what they're doing. They're the ones who do know what they're doing because they never really tell us until it's after the fact. But we're getting along to this new step where they're going to manage our whole lives from birth to grave, cradle to grave. And that's what it's all about. And the way it's done is so legalistic because in legalism and law comes about, even common law, by custom. When something is introduced, if you accept it quietly, silence connotes consent. I hope you all understand that. Silence is consent. It's not objectionable. You're consenting by silence. And we've all been conditioned along this road where experts are running our lives. They tell us what to dress, what to wear for the rainy days. And we can have billboards along highways to tell us how to drive. If you're tired, pull over and have a nap. And all that kind of stuff. We're told what to do. We don't have to think anymore. And in this Brave New World scenario, as they bring us through it, we go into the police state initially, while they change the whole system upside down, a system into a controlled society under complete observation. Because for a predictable society, everyone must have all their information out there available to the authority at all times. That way you're predictable. That's what we're going through, step by step. And with the Department of Defense publishing their top think tanks' plans and what their forecasts for the next 30 years of mayhem, public uprisings, and all that kind of stuff, you can see that that's the Orwellian phase we're going into. We're in it, actually. As we're taught to show ID cards and grovel in front of uniformed people and always look at their feet, just like slaves have always done. And most folk are accepting it quite calmly because at the same time we're given this scientific overload of consumerism, and we like it. And we're back with more of this after the following messages. I'm going to read a bit from Advertising Age. Advertising Age, you can look it up yourself. December 11th, 2007 issue. And I talked about this some time ago, and how Voice to Skull would come and first be used for advertising. And here it is. It says, "Hear voices, it might be an ad. An A&E billboard whispers a spooky message audible only in your head and pushed to promote its new paranormal program," by Andrew Hamp. Published December the 10th, 2007. New York. It's theadage.com. New Yorker Allison Wilson was walking down Prince Street in Soho last week when she heard a woman's voice right in her ear asking, "Who's there? Who's there?" She looked around to find no one in her immediate surroundings. Then the voice said, "It's not your imagination." No, he's not crazy. Our intrepid reporter Andrew Hamp ventures to Soho to hear for himself the technology that has New Yorkers freaked out and A&E buzzing. No, he's not crazy. And it repeats that again twice for some reason. Indeed, he's not crazy. It isn't. It's an ad for Paranormal State, a ghost-themed series premiering on A&E this week. The billboard is a billboard in the street above the street level. It says the billboard uses technology manufactured by Holosonic, that transmits an audio spotlight from a rooftop speaker so that sound is contained within your cranium, that's your skull. The technology, ideal for museums and libraries. Here's your spin to make you accept it. Ideal for museums and libraries, or environments that require a quiet atmosphere, probably funerals too. The coffin will speak to you. For isolated audio slideshows, has rarely been used on such a scale before. For random passers-by and residents who have to walk unwittingly through the area where the voice will penetrate their inner peace, it's another story. Miss Wilson, a New York-based stylist, said she expected the voice inside her head to be some type of creative project. Yeah, sure, I'm sure she thought that. But could see how others might perceive it differently. This is a PR blurb, actually, particularly on a late-night stroll home. I might be a little freaked out, and I wouldn't necessarily think it was coming from a billboard, she said. And here he goes on, less intrusive approach. Joe Pompey, a rather pompous guy, president and founder of Holosonics, said the creepy approach is key to drawing attention to A&E's show, but he noted the technology was designed to avoid adding to noise pollution. You know, isn't that beautiful of a psychopath? How they can twist something into the reverse and say they're trying to avoid noise pollution by putting thoughts right into your head. Because that's what it amounts to, you see. If you really want to annoy a lot of people, a loudspeaker is the best way to do it, he said. If you set up a loudspeaker on top of a building, everybody's going to hear that noise. But if you're only directing that sound to a specific viewer, you're never going to hear a neighbor complaint from street vendors or pedestrians. The whole idea is to spare other people. Oh, they're being nice to us. They're being nice to us. Good PR psychopath there. Holosonics had partnered with a cable network once before when Court TV implemented the technology to promote its mystery whisperer in the mystery sections of select bookstores. You see how they do it too? They introduce it gradually in little places like that till you're used to it. This is another article actually getting you used to it. Mr. Pompey said the company also has tested retail deployments in grocery stores with Procter & Gamble, oh, the big ones, and Kraft, the crafty one, for customized audio messaging. So a customer, for example, looking to buy laundry detergent could suddenly hear the sound of gurgling water and thus feel compelled to buy Tide as a result of the sonic experience. Mr. Pompey contends that technology will take time for consumers to get used to. We're going to get trained, folks. We're going to be trained, much like the lights on digital signage and illuminated billboards did when they were first used. Website Gawker posted an item about the billboard last week with the headline, Schizophrenia is a new ad gimmick, and asked how soon will it be until, in addition to the do not call list, we'll have a do not beam commercial messages into my head list. There's going to be a certain population sensitive to it. Well, once people see what it does and hear for themselves, yeah, intrusive thoughts, right? They'll see its effective for getting attention, Mr. Pompey said. Yeah, it sure will. A&E's $3 million to $5 million campaign for paranormal includes other more disruptive elements than just the one audio ad in New York. In Los Angeles, a mechanical face creeps out of a billboard as if it's coming towards the viewer, and then recedes. In print, the marketing team persuaded 2 print layers to surrender a full editorial page to their ads, flipping the gossip section in AM New York upside down and turning a page in this week's parade into a checkerboard for ads for paranormal. AM New York's gossip page got turned upside down as a promo. So here you are getting trained to accept the next step. Now, don't ever believe for a second that independent companies just went ahead and did this on their own. This is backed from the top, because this will have a tremendous effect on the culture and on the behavior of the people. Nothing, remember, is allowed to happen. Even Plato said this a long time ago. Nothing happens that would disrupt the culture. Everything has to be approved from the top, especially on something on a scale as this. And you'll find these companies and corporations are all interwoven. The biggest corporations are all just sections of your security services, your CIA, MI6, and so on. Real companies, real corporations, but they run the technological side of things. And this is going to be made more prevalent, and I've no doubt they'll use it in the school systems to calm the students. Now, we've got Callum in Connecticut, I think it is. Hello, Callum, are you there?
Yes, Alan. How are you?
Not so bad.
I'm a long-time listener. Actually, I just wanted to. I know you touch on Cecil Rhodes quite often.
Yeah.
At the risk of being too redundant, I found in my grandmother's old bookshelf a book called Pageant of Europe. It's like an old textbook from the 30s.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, could I just read a quick quote from it?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And there's a whole chapter on him, and this is something that really called out at me, and it's just basically about his will. Mm-hmm. And it says, the will proposed to establish a trust fund to and for the establishment, promotion, and development of a secret society, the true aim and object whereof shall be the extension of British rule throughout the world, the perfecting of a system of immigration from the United Kingdom and of colonization by British subjects of all lands where the means and livelihood are attainable by energy, labor, and enterprise, and especially the occupation by British settlers of the entire continent of Africa, the Holy Land, the valley of the Euphrates, the islands of Cyprus and Cadia, and the whole of South America, the islands of the Pacific, heretofore proposed by Great Britain, the whole of the Malay Archipelago, the seaboard of China, Japan, the ultimate recovery of the United States of America in the integral part of the British Empire, the inauguration of a system of colonial representation in the imperial parliament, which may tend to wield together the disjoined members of the empire, and finally the foundation of so great a power as to hereafter render wars impossible and promote the best interests of humanity. Now is that talking about the Council of Relations, Trilateral, all the other...
Yeah. What he did was he left the will in charge of Lord Rothschild, who took over.
Okay.
And he helped run the society from then on. And they said they would base it on the Jesuit system, in other words, massive deception. Based on massive deception where the public would never catch on to what was really going on. And they would set up front organizations as well. These were the social organizations that evolved into the big foundations. But again, too, this was authorized by the Crown of Britain. Never forget that. Rhodes didn't come out with this himself. He was acting on behalf of the Crown and the aristocracy of Britain at their command. That's why it's a Royal Institute of International Affairs.
He, like all of us, is a mere subject as well.
Yes. And the whole idea was to counter democracy, to set up a parallel government that would end up through foundations and front companies which evolved into the big high-tech companies. They're all part of the same system. All the famous names ones are all part of it.
Yeah.
And they would direct our lives into a planned society. When they talk about the benefit of mankind, who decides what benefit is? It's their benefit, and that's what they meant by it. They said that democracy would be so time-consuming and wasteful they couldn't get anything done, and so they'd have to create a parallel system. And so Lord Alfred Milner, who ran the Round Table Society, was ordered to join, and they merged the two, the Royal Institute for International Affairs that came from Cecil Rhodes Foundation, and the Lord Milner Society, the Round Table Society, the Debating Society, merged together, and they created the League of Nations, which became the United Nations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're pretty much on a new level, like on a new tier, I guess, like within the new.
We're almost at the end of their function, because our whole lives have been directed. The media that came out too with Carroll Quigley, the historian for the Council on Foreign Relations, which is only a non-Commonwealth term for the same organization.
Yeah.
And he said that this is the new feudal system where the CEOs are tied in with government, and they will be the new feudal overlords of the world. And that's what we're seeing now. The big corporations and their CEOs are also run, you might say, they run environmental movements as well, along with their own foundations. They're all one big, huge, massive group organization. And they also run the newspapers. They own most of the newspapers on the planet. I'll be back with more after the following messages. I'll work back with Cutting Through the Matrix, and just to finish off on Cecil Rhodes, they also brought on board the big scientific, in fact they created the big scientific institutions that lead the technology of the world, they own them. They're all intermeshed with your MI6, as I say, CIA, and so on. Because in a technological society, you can't. That's what they said in the Cold War. Those with the best technologies would win this war. Therefore, that's when they started up in earnest. The big corporations that also sell your computers to you, and they sell your CDs and all the rest of the little gadgets you use. They're legitimate companies, but they're all run by the intelligence services at the very top. We're being guided along a particular path, and we must become addicted to it. That's the key to it. That's why we'll acquiesce most of the way, at least most people will, all the way into it. Now, we've also got Suzanne in Alabama. Are you there, Suzanne?
Thank you for taking my call.
Yes.
I've been thinking about joining the Peace Corps, but first, before I made a decision, I wanted to hear from you on what's really behind them, who's really behind them, what their agenda really is, and where they fit in with the New World Order, if at all.
Yes. Well, the Peace Corps was designed to take over. They knew that the missionary societies would eventually, because the idea was to eventually abolish religion, to dwindle it down until it wasn't so much acceptable. And that's stated in so many of the different charters that are out there. But they had to replace it. See, the missionaries used to bring not religion with them, but a culture with them. That was the key to it. And they're often backed up by military, and they're also incredible intelligence-gathering agencies. And the Peace Corps took over from that. You go into all these different countries, and some of them will do some good work for the people. However, outside of their advertising, you're really bringing in a culture. You want to standardize your culture onto another people who don't have your culture. In fact, they're not used to a manufacturing society, an 8-to-5 society, or anything like that. A lot of them are self-sustainable. They are independent of the system, and those are the peoples who must be either eradicated or made to alter their ways to adapt to the new system according to modern economics. And really, it doesn't do them any service to go into a country and alter their culture and dress them up with suits and ties, give them a briefcase or a Bible, and tell them that you're now one of us. That's insulting.
Yes.
That's insulting to the people. Now, most folk go into the Peace Corps because they're advised if they want to get into politics, it's a step up the ladder to have down time in the Peace Corps or any other big charitable organizations. So it depends on what your own intentions really are. There are many alternatives to the Peace Corps that you can go into where the real work is done.
Well, I'll definitely look into that then.
Yes, in fact, I know some people who do this themselves. They go into other countries with small groups of people, and they help out where help really is needed without forcing an ideology or a commercialized system onto the people at the same time.
That's what I would want to do, so I'm really glad I checked with you first.
Yeah, if you email me, I can give you an address.
Oh, I will. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for calling.
And best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Now we've got Ryan in New York. Are you there, Ryan?
Hey, you can hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
I think a few shows ago you mentioned how the mystery religion was basically various forms of enslavement of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think about how religion refers to binding and tying up, and the mystery binding, like you come into this world and you go to school and you follow these laws and you're kind of binded. You kind of are the mystery religion.
Well, your whole culture is the mystery religion. You realize that everything that's happened in your lifetime, all the little formalities that you think are cultural are actually religious in nature. And they were given to you, and Albert Pike explains some of this in his own writings. Now, he was the Pope of Freemasonry for a long time. And he said a phrase that most people miss or they can't understand. He said, including those who are Freemasons but have never gone through the higher rituals, he was talking about people who hadn't taken the first, second, and third degrees, because your whole training in life is actually Masonically based. Your school and education system, if you read all the top Masonic books that are put out by the Grand Lodge of England, or the Coronati Lodge of England, that's their research department, they admit that they were behind the setting up and the promoting worldwide of a standardized educational system for everyone. So your whole education came from them. Secondly, the eradication of standardized religions was also part of their ideology, and it was been primarily Freemasons who went round to where your social events were, or even where your local government institutions were, where they would always open with some prayer or other and complain that that was offensive to them. And so there's a massive network going around doing this, and that's why they're all pulled out of these particular meetings and in school eventually. You're living in a Masonic system and culture, and it works from the bottom right up to the top. You'll find pretty well everybody on your school board is either Eastern Star or a member of one of the lodges, and that goes all the way up to your federal government. You're living with inside a religion. We'll be back with more after the following messages. I'm Alan Watt, back with Cutting Through the Matrix. I don't know if Ryan is still on the line. Are you there, Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention as well that the whole idea of training in school and grading, even a grade comes from a term, to grade, to build upwards, as you would build a hill or a pyramid. All the terms that you use are building terms from Freemasonry that copied its terminology from the architecture of ancient times. And then you go up through your college, and you're a pupil. A pupil is part of your eye, the eye of Ra. You are a pupil. That's why you're the apple of the eye, you see. And you start off as a pupil, and then you become a student, and then you go up, and then you get maybe a diploma or a degree. A degree is also part of the gradient, you see, as you go up the degrees. And then, of course, if you eventually qualify and you get your little scroll, and then you're handed, that's your scroll for life, of course, saying that you're approved. You're dumbed down and stupid enough now and being quality approved that you can join their system and work for them in their system. That's what that means. And then they put the little cap on you. That's the hod, the old Masonic hod. That's why it's got that funny shape on it. It's got the tassel hanging down. That means it's a limp penis, by the way. That's what it means, the tassel. And you're now dumbed down and stupid enough to be allowed to work in their system. And you've been approved by their quality control management team. That's what it means. The whole system you're living in and all the signs and symbols you see around you are Freemasonic. That's the religion that runs this world. Does that help to answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling. Now we've got Joe from Florida there. You there, Joe? Hello, Joe. Hello, Joe.
Yeah, Joe from Florida.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I spoke to you once before. I do like your subjects very, very deeply. I don't know how well you are informed, but it's a method used through the King James. I learned it through part of the biblical things in my time, and it goes back to about 1941, 42, when I first heard of it. And there are, on the barns in Pennsylvania, the Amish and so forth use them. They call them hex signs.
Yeah.
Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I've seen them. Uh-huh.
Okay. Then you have a religious person that can do powwow.
Mm-hmm.
If you have sunburns and stuff like that and you are sick, they will tell you who is putting the hex on you and what to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in my time about 3 people who could powwow.
Yeah.
And one that did the hexing, true story, is a friend of mine, which is still living, but his sister also is living. And this was done to her when she was a little kid, a little baby.
Yeah.
And the aunt or the uncle, I think it was the aunt, that was jealous of her brother having a girl, firstborn, and put a hex on the girl, and she wouldn't eat. She was nervous. She was going down the tubes slowly. So the father went ahead and got a powwow man and he gave her something like a bag of garlic and hung it around her neck and told them who did the hexing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the aunt of the girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, to learn of the hexing, are you aware of the 7th book of Moses?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know the Moses and the Talmud pretty well, yeah.
People do not even talk about it. The preachers don't even know about it.
Mm-hmm.
But in the 7th book, it'll tell you, God tells you not to read it. It's too deep.
Mm-hmm.
You better know what you're doing or you can hurt yourself. In other words, you're doing evil things.
Yeah.
Also, you can read that same, I hate to give you this information like this because people probably do know of it, and a lot of people don't, and the people who don't know of it will do it. But I will tell you, you get the 7th book of Moses and you read it backwards 7 times, which is Christ's number. He's going against Christ, or they are going against Christ, which is the devil. We're going against, and you read it 7 times backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you will be able to perform bad things. Now,
well, even this stuff came out, a lot of it, in the Salem witch trials as well. And, of course, you had the Crucible movie, a very good movie, The Crucible, that went into it. But it's also drafted with hysteria as well. To be honest with you, if you're terrified of curses, you're prone to curses and the effects of curses. If you're not terrified of them, it doesn't matter what comes your way, you will defeat it, and it won't even bother you. And it's like the Aborigines of Australia. If the bones get tossed up in the air, they come down and they point at you, then that means they've been taught that you're going to die, and they will lay down and literally wait, and they will die. Because it's geared as part of their religion. Now, the whole New Age phenomena is, interestingly enough, because, and I hate to say this, but it's true, the New Age is old age stuff rehashed. It's very, very old, very ancient. But women often will go, because they're more nature-bound, they love nature more so than the males. And they love flowers and the plants and how things grow because they give birth. And they're prone to go into this wanting to control through magic. And so the New Age was designed and promoted primarily at women. And I know for a fact there's a lot of this cursing going on now today through various Wiccan societies and all the rest of it. And you know what happens when you end up like this? You end up with a society that was like Haiti, where you go to the voodoo man, he'll cast a spell for a few bucks or a pig or something.
And that does work.
And then you end up going to the same guy to get the curse taken off you, and he's rolling in the money, and he's getting heads of pigs. Meanwhile, the public are all paranoid of each other. Everybody's paranoid of everybody else in that system. So it's a form of madness that's created by cultural indoctrination and reinforced by repetition. And as I say, if people only keep their wits about them, nothing, and I mean nothing, is going to affect you if you're on the right path. But yeah, in ancient times too, you have all the stories of Saul and different ones going to the witch of Endor for their magic, etc. You have Paul in the New Testament, who the feminists used it out of ignorance, really. I think willful ignorance, some of them who knew. But Paul said for the women to keep quiet in church because channeling divinities was common in ancient times, just like it is in modern Pentecostal and charismatic churches. They'll stand up there and they'll channel the deity or God or something. Well, it was the same thing back then, and when they were trying to give a sermon, they couldn't finish it because one after the other was standing up and channeling a deity to the audience, to the congregation. That's why he said to keep quiet in church, nothing to do with prejudice or anything. So this has always been an appealing thing to certain peoples down through time, and it's definitely been handed down. We know for a fact a lot of them who came in with the Pilgrim fathers belonged to societies. They're still on the go today, and they brought a lot of this stuff to do with the hex, etc., with them. Yeah.
Now, there's another portion that my sister seen it happen, and this old lady, which I knew of, had a cow. It gave a lot of milk, like 11 quarts in the morning and 11 at night.
Yeah.
She had more milk than she ever needed. And a friend of mine bought this cow and brought it home and put it in the barn right up at our place, you know. And I think it was a day or two later, that cow went positively dry.
Yeah.
And my sister seen this lady throwing kisses at the moon one night and so forth and going through a ritual.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, my friend had bought the cow.
Mm-hmm.
And it went dry 2 or 3 days after. And he didn't know why so sudden it went dry. I never told him. He was a pretty good friend of mine. I just kept quiet about it. Mm-hmm. He might have not believed me.
Yeah.
But now that you know what I'm talking about, and not very many people do know what we're talking about,
yeah.
And the ones I knew who knew are dead.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to find out. Of it that you did know, so I'm very thankful that you had answer for me.
Okay. Thanks for calling. Yeah, this is age old. This casting spells for power, and it was very common in ancient times, right up to the present. Actually, you can still go to women who give you little magic potions to get the particular man you're after, and you should ask for your money back when you end up getting divorced because it was the wrong one, obviously. But they have all these little things going on, and it appeals to people. And even the raising of standing stones in ancient times was the first attempt to control nature. That's what the Stonehenge-type structures initially were, and then turned into celestial laboratories, really, where they could observe the stars for the high priests who end up conquering the minds and ruling the people. But initially, when they rose them up, they were showing a defiance to nature itself in an attempt to dominate and conquer nature, and that's never stopped. And they branched out down through the eons into what we call the mystery religion or the secret societies of today. And you'll find them within every organizational structure that you think is part of your culture. You have an exoteric and an esoteric side to even your local golf club. You'll have your group who go in there for the general members, but there's always an inner clique who decide policy, who gets jobs in that area, contracts, and so on. The same as within the Shriners and all Freemasonic organizations, the exoteric for the public, and even for the lower members, and an esoteric that's in the know, as they say. And they'll often touch their nose while they say that, if you catch on to how they speak and communicate. So magic appeals to people who want control over others, and they want power over others. And then, of course, you have tremendous jealousies and spite coming out. Africa was rampant with it too. So it's not confined to any one people. The ancient world and the Middle East, even ancient Greece and so on, these were all rampant with the same problems of people casting spells on others, and those who would at least put a good act on and cast a spell and put a good flourishing show on, and a very impressive show, would end up getting masses of respect from the people because they feared them. The people would fear these people who became holy people, and they would give them gifts to placate them. So it's a great con job. And today we have the same thing going on with the TV evangelists, the superstars. Everything in America is done in a big way. It's completely combined with entertainment. And so the big superstar evangelists, with their dripping of gold and all the rest of it, masses of bracelets, always asking for money. I always have got amazed how God needs all this money. But apparently God can never have enough money. And these characters do the same thing. They bring up these poor souls who are conditioned into a culture of belief and promised cures because they worship this person actually more than they do with their God. That's pretty obvious because they've been convinced this person upon the stage who's altered. That's what an altar is. You're now above all men. You're on a stage. That's why they go crazy in a crowd when you're up there, even in a rock concert. And they believe that you can cure them. And these characters take their money, they take their mortgages off them, second mortgages and all the rest of it. and they laugh all the way to the bank, and they can get a cripple to dance and sing for a minute or so for the audience. That's basic hypnosis. It works very well, and then the person's back in the wheelchair, and maybe even worse than before, often than the very next day or a few hours later. And many programs have been documented on this and follow-ups, and these patients are in a sad way. Some people lose their children. They'll do anything to save their children, and they're ripped off. So magic is magic, even the promise of magic. And none of it would work. None of this would work if you did not give your faith in people. And because people are not content with a deity, they want a god or a king on legs walking this planet. That's what they want to worship. That's all through the Bible, really. And that's the allegory behind a people who wanted a king like the other tribes. It's telling you, once you get a king, you worship the king in his way. You're worshiping another human being, but raising him to a godly status. And that's how Rome ran as well. Even Constantine, who gave you he actually accepted Christianity as another religion. He belonged to Mithraism and a whole bunch of other insurance policies, I call them. He joined every club there was for the afterlife. And after he admitted to Christianity into the group, he then had a temple built where the people could go and worship his likeness, his statue, as all the emperors did long before him, and some after as well. So people love to worship human beings, unfortunately, and that's the downfall of most people. They're not content with something that's out there beyond all of this, that they can communicate with personally. And I've always thought it odd that Christians follow these evangelists, these superstars, when the founder, supposedly, of the religion they follow tells them to go into their own room or closet and pray to their deity on their own. You don't need a middleman. No matter how much gold is rattling around on his arms or his neck, you don't need a middleman to do it. But they unfortunately prefer superstars, and that's a sad condition of humanity. Those who follow are not content. And that's why you have the blind leading the blind. It's very few that can use the religion they're given and climb up using it to a higher level, because the same esoteric messages are contained within all religions. And pure Christianity has been used as a bloody sword since it was taken over by the Roman Empire, and that all the crusades and the slaughtering galore and the looting and pillaging, and they've got the audacity to say it was all for Christ. What a pathetic joke. Again, the psychopaths have no problem reversing everything and giving you these justifications for atrocity, ultimate atrocity. Then all the wars we've had since, with every side praying to the same God, supposedly, to spare their men, as to tell them by the thousands to rush across battlefields and get shot down by cannon and machine guns. What a disgusting disgrace. But that's for the masses. I'll be back with more after the following messages. And just before we sign off for tonight, remember that there are some items on my site for sale. Items which certainly will help you in your quest to understanding of what's going on. The books are good in that they're designed to help you start to think as you read them. In fact, you'll see more each time you do read them. It's a different type of teaching where you're not just getting downloaded and here's the facts, memorize them. Most of that you simply forget. You don't participate. You're taught not to think while you're reading. That's how you're taught at school. Just remember this, parrot it, and you get through. You get a little Masonic cap, and with your tassel hanging down. And you have to start thinking for yourself and look at what's all around you and question everything that went into making your culture. So get the books, get the CDs on ancient religions, get the DVDs, and you can also donate as well to my site. That keeps me going with the information I'm giving out. It's different from other sites out there, different from other shows out there. I'm not promoting a particular way. I'm simply pointing out the way we're going and that it's up to every individual to stop looking for a champion who's going to do it all for you, because you are responsible for the future. Every single one of you are responsible for the future, and we must deflect this giant, yes, it's a giant system. We have to deflect it off in another direction. They've told us openly in their own publications, these big foundations, the big organizations that are interlocked, they've told us where they are taking us, which is technically oblivion, where you cannot think for yourself. You'll have no mind of it. In fact, you wouldn't even know that you were an individual personality. That's been stated. That will be utopia for the elite, with their big technocracy running the affairs of people who will be programmed robots. And as Huxley said, well, what's the problem with giving people or taking their minds from them because they're not happy the way they are? What he failed to add is that he was well aware that the reason you're not so happy is because the big boys gave you the system, and is intended to keep you in a state of anxiety. That's how they maintain their control over you. We're in anxiety, and so he was well aware of the reasons why we were so ready to give things up. But if we give up the one thing that we do have, and that's you, each one of you happens to be unique, absolutely unique. You don't need some fancy guy with his $5,000 suit and a bunch of clowns with billboards saying vote for this, vote for that to save you. They will not save you. Look at your own lifetime and how many parties have come and gone. And this agenda, this world agenda, UN agenda, goes on. It's time that we started to react ourselves and take charge of our own existence here on planet Earth.